The next era of Fortnite OG, you guys, or should I say its next chapter literally, is looking absolutely insane, and there's a lot of evidence that Fortnite OG may actually be moving to Chapter 2 very soon. So if you guys don't know, right now in Fortnite's files, the OG Chapter 1 map discovery just got pushed all the way to November of 2026, and that kind of changed everything in an instant. If OG seasons keep their every other month pace, Season X is going to wrap up around late July 2026. So what are we going to do for those extra 4 months while the OG mode is still out? Today, we're going to paint the clearest picture of OG rolling into Chapter 2, why it actually makes sense, what it would look like, and what Epic would need to do to make this actually work. If you guys want to hear more about what OG could look like if it doesn't go into Chapter 2, if they actually make new seasons like a Season 11, I've made other videos on that. Click in the top right here if you'd like to watch them. I think this could be one of the best nostalgia arcs yet if they do it right. That November 28th, 2026 end date for OG is a big tell that OG has a lot more planned than just going to Season X and ending, or, going back to Season 1. It doesn't line up at all with a clean Chapter 1 end. We'd finish Season X around July, like I said, leaving about a 4-month gap, and a lot of people are wondering, what is Epic Games actually planning for that gap? Now, we've seen reliable chatter over the last couple of months that Chapter 2 Season 4 at least, which is the first Marvel season called Nexus War, is planned to return around January of 2027. Now, that was a leak a while ago when we weren't really having many conversations about what OG was going into after Season X. But when you think about it, that timing of January 2027 slides in perfectly right after a full Chapter 1 replay. It would leave time for Season 1, 2, and 3 to continue based on the pace of every other month a brand new season until, of course, Season 4 in January. Now, Epic's own messaging when OG came out kept saying that OG is here to stay. That can mean the mode stays alive even if the map advances into a different era or a different chapter, so to speak. Now, a lot of people think that Chapter 2 isn't really OG, or Chapter 2 wouldn't have as much pull as OG, and I do agree that it may not have as much pull as Chapter 1, but Remix definitely proved something last year, and that is that a huge audience still loves the Chapter 2 vibes. Even though Remix wasn't a one-to-one replay of Chapter 2, the interest was still there, and people were very excited to just play even a replay of one of the best seasons in Chapter 2. So the theory of OG going into Chapter 2 isn't crazy at all. It's very timeline friendly. It's also audience friendly and kind of feels like, the next logical step if OG isn't ending next year. Now, like I said earlier, you guys, a lot of people feel that the word OG means Chapter 1 only. But for a lot of people, OG just simply means the early Fortnite feeling when we had simpler metas, recognizable POIs, and most importantly for me, a lot better and cleaner storytelling. Chapter 2, I feel like, had that slower, more seasonal flavor, if you know what I mean. I feel like there was less mythic spam most seasons, there was less map bloat overall. I feel like there was more identity per season as well, and additionally, the storyline was very good in Chapter 2. It wasn't nearly as good as Chapter 1, but in Chapter 2, it was definitely still in the forefront, which is something we still don't have today. If Epic labels it as OG Chapter 2, the promise is still nostalgia, limited modern systems, and not a modern BR reskin, if that makes any sense. The Chapter 2 tone absolutely fits OG energy better than trying to loop a remix or something like that forever. I would really like it if we went through every single one of the Chapter 2 seasons. So while the label is debatable, the kind of nostalgic Fortnite you can jump into and understand instantly still checks out with OG. I think a lot of people definitely were there for Chapter 2, including Chapter 1, because after the black hole, I feel like everybody was playing Fortnite, so Chapter 2 still is as recognizable as OG in my opinion. Now, what would an OG Chapter 2 actually look like? And when you think about it, it's relatively simple. It would work almost exactly how OG is right now. At least that's what we think. Of course, they could change this, or this could not happen at all. So we will have Season 1 through 8. We would see all of the progression throughout every single season. Now, me personally, I would love to see Season 2 back. I don't think many people would really care about Season 1, to be honest. Season 1 and 2 were actually two of the longest seasons we've ever had in Fortnite. And I think Season 1, you could probably argue, is one of the closest times to Fortnite ever dying, just because there were barely any updates. Everybody in the Fortnite team was really kind of burnt out overall. They stopped the weekly updates, which back then was a really whiplash to the community. Like, a lot of people weren't really expecting that. But Season 2, going back to the actual faithful return of that without all the artists and everything, would be cool. Season 3, I would be very particularly excited for. I was really disappointed Remix didn't touch this at all. It's one of Fortnite's most ambitious seasons in my opinion, and one of the coolest ones that we've ever had. Season 4, of course, was very cool with Nexus War and everything. leaking. And if that leak still holds that season 4, the first Marvel season, is going to come out around January 2027, I think that would be really cool, but it also is a bit weird that that's the only one that we have leaks for. It's kind of weird that we haven't heard anything about any of the other ones, so keep that in mind. I think it would also be really cool if Fortnite decided to kind of tweak the storyline a little bit. I don't think they would need to do it as much in Chapter 2 because I think the Chapter 2 storyline is interesting as it is, but I think it would be cool if Fortnite still kind of tapped into those little things that are different or changed throughout time just to keep it a little bit more interesting like they did with OG. Season 6 was by far my least favorite season we had in Chapter 2, but 5, 7, and 8 were all peak seasons. I loved Season 5 being around the 0 point, 7, the invasion, and 8 being cubed was absolutely awesome. And Season 8 right there, cubes, we could finally see every single cube back on the map that we have now. The red, blue, purple, and gold ones all at the same time would be pretty cool to see as well. Now for me, you guys, Chapter 2 is probably my favorite chapter in Fortnite ever. I think that it really only had one bad season, which was Season 6, and even that could be a lot of fun to go back to. I'd really love to replay all of these seasons the right way. Remix definitely scratched an itch that I had to go back to Chapter 2, but it was mostly Season 2 content, and like you guys know, one of my first videos that blew up was me ranting about how Remix was really bad because I wanted to go back to just how Chapter 2 was, but we never truly got the Flood, the Nexus War arc, and the late chapter storyline build-ups that really made Chapter 2 special. Like I said, there's still a huge audience for Chapter 2, and Remix proved that. And because Chapter 2 really just makes sense to go into after Season X if we're just following the past of Fortnite lore and Fortnite stuff like that, I think it would make a lot of sense. And who knows, maybe around the time Chapter 2 ends, we could also get Chapter 3 and then Chapter 4, depending on how people feel about it as time goes on. I think this possibility is probably the most popular among people, especially in my comments. A lot of you guys really want Chapter 2 to come back, and I completely understand. I would honestly like if we could just skip Season 1 because there's really not a ton to do in Season 1. I know it'd be really cool to kind of venture throughout the blank map of Chapter 2, but when it gets later on in Chapter 2, it is a lot of fun. I think this one definitely makes the most sense. But this is one of the biggest problems with Chapter 2 coming back to OG, and I talked about this yesterday in the context of a Season 11. It's that OG Chapter 2 is more complex than Chapter 1, you know, bigger map transformations, vehicle and water systems, event-driven POI changes. Like, the events that we have in Chapter 2 are a lot bigger and better than Chapter 1. They would need to lock in on stability. We can't repeat the persistent changes that OG Chapter 1 has had, you know, loot not being correct, all these different bugs and things being in the wrong place. They need to be more clear about what's in and out per season, no like mystery vaults or things that don't come out until a random time. We need more season-accurate loot pulls, and that should be very obvious. Additionally, I think if they're going to bring back Chapter 2, they should focus a lot more on the marketing of OG. You know, with Season 6, we didn't get any trailer or any key art or anything like that. They barely even tweeted about it until there was issues with it when the community was flaming them for how, like, bad the performance was. So if they are going to go into Chapter 2, they need to make sure they're locking in on the attention and detail that Chapter 2 OG would deserve. But overall, you guys, if OG pushes into Chapter 2, the upside is absolutely massive with nostalgia, the replayability, and a second pillar that doesn't kind of, like, destroy OG in general. But it only works if Epic tightens the attention, if they communicate clearly, and they keep it faithful to Chapter 2. No random modern systems sneaking in and things like that. I'm so down to experience things like the Flood again, to see Nexus War again, and even if they made Primal a little bit better, or if it was exactly the same too, I'd probably still play it. But if they pull this off, I think OG could genuinely actually rival the main BR mode overall. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Like I said, I made a video yesterday talking about what if Fortnite went into Season 11 of Fortnite OG. If you'd like to watch that, it'll be at the end of this video. But do you want OG to go into Chapter 2, or would you rather it just restart or continue seasons? Let me know. Drop a like on today's video. You watched all the way to the end. You must have enjoyed, so drop a like. Subscribe to the channel. I make videos like these every single day. Use code PROZEROYT, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.